Hey everyone, welcome back to The Inner. Today I'm joined by Christine Smith.
Hello.
Hey Christine, how are you?
Awesome. Nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you too, and it's nice to have you here.
Thanks.
So, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I'm Christine Smith. I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and in the United States. And I would say, a ministry leader first. I'm also a homeschool mom of three teenagers. And I am an entrepreneur. I love all things spiritual. And so a lot of times people put me in the Christian box, but I wouldn't say that that's entirely accurate. I do follow Yeshua, but I kind of dig into all things spiritual. So, yeah.
That's nice. So, if you could kind of narrate for us, because you have a similar setup as myself. I get labeled a Christian, even though I tell people I'm not, and I'm blatantly not if you look close enough. Um, but kind of share your story. How did you get from where you started? How did your relationship with Yeshua begin? And how did that transition to where you are now?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Um, well, I grew up in a not only a non-Christian home, but an anti-Christian home. Um, One that was really not spiritual at all. Um, but then uh, I always had some sort of, I would say, inner knowing about what I called God at that point. And so I had some sort of thing inside of me, I think, that was always searching and knowing and even having a very basic relationship. And when I was in middle school, like late middle school, around like 13 maybe, I someone introduced me to the gospel through a conference, like a teenage conference, right? And it was a Christian conference, and I heard about Yeshua for the first time, and I just immediately knew it was true. And that kind of started me going, yeah, I'm a Christian. And at that point, I had no idea really what that meant because I was never a part of the church or anything like that. Um, but I was a cheerleader at the time, if you can believe it. And I had this senior cheerleader who started mentoring me and showing me kind of, hey, it's good to have a relationship with God. And so I didn't really understand all that, but I did what I would say any normal person would do. When I say normal, I mean not church going normal, okay? I mean, like, if you tell me we're going to have relationship, then I'm going to listen to you, spend time with you, all of these things. And so that's what I understood as relationship. And so I didn't just go into kind of the normal religious um read the Bible to learn all the stories. I was not that person. I really sought after listening to the Lord. Okay. And so I started having a relationship with who I knew at the time as Jesus. And then with the Father. And it just, those two especially, it really developed from there. And I became really passionate about worship and about listening to the Lord. He started using me pretty early in basic gifts of the Spirit, like healing. That was a big part of my life, even though no one around me really did that. It was something he would just tell me, okay, go up and touch that person. And I'd argue with them and, and be like, I'm not doing that. And I would do it anyway because I'm pretty obedient. And so, anyway, I would do that. And I started to learn and grow and develop. And eventually, he called me to go into ministry. And so I went to a normal kind of Christian university, if you will. And I did all of the Bible training and all of this stuff to go into normal ministry. It wasn't very helpful for ministry, if I'm honest, um, for what I learned. But I really had a way of questioning everything. That's always how I've been. And so I always, the Lord would call me into places that I didn't want to go. And uh, for a long time, I was working in United Methodist churches, and I was like what I would call a closet charismatic, and um, people kind of knew that. I was a youth pastor for a long time, a worship leader for a long time, did kind of the normal church, working for a church sort of stuff, until I finally got into church planting. And um, yeah, everything kind of shifted at that point because I started doing things more from uh, recognizing that we needed to do ministry from the Lord's plans, not like just for Him. You know, I really feel like there's a difference between doing what He's telling you to do compared to doing something for Him in your own plans. And so that started the shift there. And I became a kind of a big weirdo in that way, but in a good way, I think. And then I had always looked for a mentor my whole life. I was this really on fire Christian at the time. And I always looked for a mentor, especially a woman mentor. And I wanted one desperately. And everyone I would ask would always feel like I was more spiritual than them and wouldn't do it. And so I would be disappointed. And eventually, there was this lady who invited me out. I didn't even know how she knew about me because I was a super no name. Like nobody knew who I was, and I was fine with this. This was perfect for me. Um, but this lady, somehow God told her about me, and so she met with me and started talking about these different prophetic words and things like this. And but it was a lot of stuff that the Lord privately told me. And so I was like, oh, this lady, this, maybe she's going to be my mentor. This is what I thought. And and she started saying things I didn't understand, like courts of heaven, bench of three, these things. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she just said, go watch Ian Clayton Courts of Heaven on YouTube. And so I was thinking, whatever this lady says, I'm going to do. And so I went and listened to that. And it was my first exposure to engaging the heavenly realms. And I didn't realize it, but I'd had tons of experiences like this in my life already. But I didn't realize I was taught by the church that you have to die to go to heaven. And so um, when he said, you know, death doesn't have to be your savior, I was just like, yes, you know, and everything resonated within me. And I started realizing I've been doing this for a long time. I just had no idea that's what I was doing. And so I started having really radical experiences right away. And that was almost 10 years ago. And when that happened, um, I called that lady up and I was like, hey, this has happened to me. What does this mean? And she goes, oh, I don't know. I've never even watched that stuff. And I was like, great. And at that time, I started trying to find any teachers who were teaching all of the things about engaging heaven. And a couple weeks into it, the father, he stopped me and he said, quit listening to any teachers. I want Yeshua to be your rabbi. And so I was like, oh, and kind of realizing at that time I had an idol of man for all of my life and I didn't recognize it. It's like I thought I had to feed off of other people. I had to be taught by someone, be under someone, all of those things. And I really was nervous about having Yeshua as my rabbi, which is crazy now. I mean, now I think, how could I be so dumb? But at the time, that was like, what? And man, he just I started going after him with everything and just trying to engage the heavenly realms constantly. And every moment I could, it didn't matter if I was in the shower or on the toilet or putting a baby down to bed, whatever it was, I was like on it. And um, honestly, I didn't have a million experiences right away, but I was passionate about going after him more than anybody I knew. And if I had 1 out of 10 experiences, I was going to try to engage like 20 to 30 times a day so I could have at least a couple really cool experiences. And that's how I was. Most people would try once, fail, try again next week. I feel like I grew really fast just because I failed really fast. And then I just started growing more and more. The Lord told me to start mentoring people. I thought nobody would ever want to be mentored by me. And then he opened up people to ask me the very next week to mentor them. And I started that. I ended up having these intro to engaging heaven classes he told me to do that just kind of blew up online. And I started just having tons of people in my classes immediately. And that's how I became kind of well known for leading people into the heavenly realms, was just through doing all of that and then being invited out to speak and all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of, I know that was a long winded journey, but that's where my journey began and how I am now. So I lead a ministry now that's all about engaging heaven, not part of normal church. In fact, the church that I had helped plant before became a ministry to everyone. And so it wasn't a church anymore, if you will. So we don't have services anymore and things like that. We do everything online or traveling the world. So we do a lot of what people would probably call missions. All around the world. I do a lot of work in Africa. That's probably the main place that I do work, but all over, really. And it's wonderful. I just love going and helping people grow and learn how they can have really legit relationship with the Lord. And that looks different for everybody. It's not the same for every person, which is also cool.
Nice, nice, nice. So you mentioned, so your journey isn't too different from mine, one, but I kind of want to focus in on a specific pocket of it. You mentioned
Sure.
that you weren't necessarily too successful in the beginning when you were starting to access the heavens and engage the heavens. When did that shift for you when you could say that it's now an everyday thing and this is just what I do now?
Um, Well, even when I first started, it was an everyday thing. It just wasn't an every time thing, I guess, if you know what I mean.
Got you.
But I think it was when I started engaging with other people. That was the shifting force for me. So when I'll tell you, this is kind of a weird part of my journey, but um, I didn't know that I really could do it at will.
Mhm.
um, for a while. I was like, I don't know how to do this. And I tried to follow people like Ian Clayton go step in, step out. That wasn't working for me. That it's like, no. And so it's great for some people, not for me. Um, One time I found myself in there was a guest worship leader who was coming to some church. So I went because I was invited to this little worship thing. Yeah, bigger worship thing actually. But I was in the middle of worship and it was really good. And all of a sudden I find myself in the throne room, which wasn't that weird for me. That kind of happened every so often, but I wasn't intentional about it. Just I'm there. And I had heard the first things that Ian Clayton said was the first thing you need to do is to see your destiny scroll. So I'm like, Father, do I have a destiny scroll? And he's brought me a destiny scroll. Actually, his angel brought it in, and I said, "Can I look at it?" Well, he opened it up and he only showed me one word on the whole thing, and it said intercessor. And I had in my mind intercessors like that old lady who prays day and night,
Yeah.
for people. I'm like, well, that's definitely not me because I'll forget about it in 2 seconds. And so um, I was like, that can't be me. And he showed me what he meant was I was supposed to lead people into the heavenly realms. And I was like, I immediately said, no, I'm not worthy of that. And he actually got kind of mad at, I don't know if mad's the right word, super stern maybe, with me. And I'd never experienced that side of him before. He stood up and he said, you don't tell me if you're worthy, I tell you if you're worthy. And I was like, yes, Lord. Like, I mean, really immediately. And still having no idea how I could possibly lead others into the heavenly realms when I didn't even know how to lead myself. And I told people about this experience who are close to me. And this one guy who was walking with me, he said, I want to introduce you to my spiritual mother, like someone who raised him in the faith. And I'm like, okay. And so we met on Zoom, and I'm thinking I'm just talking with her. And he said, Christine, will you lead us into the heavenly realms? And I was like, sure. Going, okay. Because I knew the Lord was like, you're supposed to do this. But I also was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I just was like, Yeshua, please, will you lead us? And he did. And it was really easy. And it kind of gave me I just have to rely on him. And it's that easy. And so from that point on, I became comfortable with it. And the Lord led me into doing this all the time. So it started out where I just had this mentoring group I told you about that was pretty small at first, like maybe like 3 or 4 people at first. Well, it grew pretty quickly because people were growing like crazy. But when they would bring in their friends, the friends would have like all the basic questions again, and so I'd have to answer like all the basics. And so this ended up creating that intro class that I was talking about, to just so they'd have to take like these 6 sessions before they could come to the mentoring group. And when that happened, people needed help all the time. So I started doing private appointments with people. Like, okay, you need help one-on-one, I'll help you. And at first it was like I was doing it all hours of the day, all the time for free, and being burnt out completely. But every time I would meet with somebody, the Lord would show up. And we would have an encounter every single time. There was never, ever a time when he didn't. And I think that that is what made me grow so fast. I learned that if I was doing it by myself, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes I'd fall asleep. I mean, it was, I'm just being honest, that's how I am. And so, but when I would engage with other people, every time, every single time, I'll get something. Even if they're not talking, nothing's happening, I would get an encounter myself. And so that, I think, is how I started to grow into the everyday space, is having the appointments with people, having groups, all of that, getting a part of the body, because I really believe that we're gifted really differently for a reason. And when we enter in the spirit together, we don't have to say a word, but we start to be able to kind of function off of each other's giftings, if you will. It's like it all comes together into one, and we have that oneness that is way more powerful. It's like tapping into the collective consciousness, if you will, like that Christ part of our mind is what happens when we enter into the oneness. And so I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of what
Yeah.
I think happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I One of my associates, I'd say, I don't think we consider each other friends, but one of my associates said something similar where he's like, accessing the heavens and moving in the supernatural works better when you use the same consciousness Christ used. He said, I can do nothing apart from the Father. Then he said, I and my Father are one.
Exactly.
Which meant that he could do anything at any time because he was always in union with his
Right.
heavenly source,
Yeah.
which is kind of that idea. A lot of times when people think of submission or obedience. They think about it in a dictatorship type of format when it's more so surrendering to a flow, just
Yeah.
as a boat with a sail surrenders to the wind so it gets where it's going. Or like I back when I used to work at a car wash, I used to watch the birds when I was bored. And on windy days, I would watch as the birds, when they wanted to fly, they just open their wings and let the air knock them into the air and just ride the current. I'm like, yeah, they surrender in order to
Uh-huh.
leave, in order to
Yeah.
take off, in order to ascend, they surrender. So I definitely understand that.
That's awesome.
Um, the next thing I kind of want to talk about, just piggybacking on where we are, what can you say have been some of the fruit or some of the testimonies that you've had in your life or other people have had after you've taken them into the heavens that has changed their life for the better? The transformations, the shifts. Talk about some of that.
Oh man, gosh, I feel like there are a million.
Yeah.
With every person, there's something, And so I think some of the coolest work that I've been able to be a part of, which I at first probably wouldn't have thought was cool, but now I really appreciate it, is for some reason, a lot of people come to me who have what people call dissociative identity disorder. And so, kind of this multiple personality thing, right? Um, Not the same as schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, all the voices are talking in your head at the same time. This would be one person comes to the front, then another person comes to the front. A lot of the church has just um, disregarded this as just demons. I mean, that's it, just demons. Okay. And I think that in some cases there's a little bit of truth to that. But um, what has happened with me is I never had training for all this, but the Father led me into all of this just through experiencing this in the heavenly realms with Him through oneness. So, um, I help people with their trauma, right? So a lot of people will come to me with their trauma, and then they'll start, oh, all of a sudden a new personality just came to the front and I'm talking to someone different. And I recognize this now pretty easily. When people go through trauma, they're soul fragments. And
Hmm.
not all the time, but especially as kids, and
Yeah.
especially through repeated trauma. And
Hmm.
so when that happens, they're soul fragments. And sometimes they take refuge in another part of their mind. Um, and sometimes they grab onto demonic things. That's true. But not all the time. This is just something that happens. And a lot of times that part isn't healed. And so they go through tons of crazy stuff in their life when this happens. Honestly, most people have hidden parts they don't know about. I didn't realize this for a long time. I just thought it was for the quote super crazies. But I would say almost everyone has some sort of fragment going on in their soul. Um, but just going through the healing and reintegration of these into the main part of them and seeing different parts of their heavenly identity, their eternal image, as I like to call it, their eternal image, and seeing these different parts come together and be reconciled to the Father. And wow, it's so cool. That is probably my favorite stuff to do. And it's weird because it's very soul based,
Hmm.
Um, but I do it through the spirit. And so I can go into traumatic places in the spirit that their mind isn't able to. That's why the fragment happens in trauma, is
Hmm.
because they just can't deal. And so their mind really can't go back to the trauma safely. And so, um, thankfully, through the oneness, I can go in and experience these things and heal some of this stuff that they can't even get to. And that is so cool. It's such a privilege. And so I think that's my favorite stuff to deal with. But I mean, we could talk about weird levitation and all sorts of crazy transrelocation and things like that. But really, that's my favorite stuff.
Yeah. I like it. Haven't heard it verbalized that way, but definitely common. um it reminds me of the recent Marvel movie that came out. Um the Thunderbolts, where they're dealing with Sentry, who becomes the Void, and it's all about his suppressed trauma and the different layers of his mind, the different parts of his soul, and how it's all separated into all these different rooms. And they pretty much have to do deliverance on multiple parts to bring the whole thing together.
I've
uh
never seen it, but now I'm super interested because that is exactly what it sounds like. It's so funny how a lot of the Marvel movies are right in line with supernatural things and
oh
all the
yeah.
spirit stuff.
Marvel
So cool.
preaches better than all of us.
Right?
I'm not afraid to say when I'm outclassed. They're a better prophesier than me. They
Uh,
got money to animate it and act it out.
I
Nah, I
know,
just
it's so cool.
so because that's been an experience I've had as well. Oftentimes, and especially the part that you mentioned about being able to help people in areas of their soul or areas of their mind that they can't access themselves.
Right.
Some people ask me, like, because they'll notice that I don't talk when I pray for people.
It's same. I'm so thankful that you're like this.
I'll just hold their hands and then stuff starts happening. People are flying, people falling, you know, and they're like, are you just saying your prayers in your head? I'm like, oh no, I don't verbalize this stuff. This is just either energy work or I'm doing stuff. I'm performing surgery is the best way to
Yes,
say it.
thank you.
And
I love that about you.
to kind of give credibility to what you're saying, not that you needed it, but I have had the experience of entering a person's mind, finding the fractured parts, putting it together, removing the parts that I can remove that don't require
Mhm.
their effort.
Yep.
Um, in some cases it is flying around, moving stuff around, grabbing a bunch. They're like, "What did you do to me? I feel clean now." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I was pretty much doing Power Wash Simulator for about 15 seconds, but 15 seconds for you, about 30 minutes for me."
That's so funny. I love it.
So
That's very cool.
I never thought about calling it or verbalizing it the way that you did, but very much accurate and very much needed.
That's cool. Yeah, I love that stuff, man. I think it's so fun. And, it's funny. I love that you were talking about how you pray because everyone, okay, like I don't know, for you guys out there, we just spoke at the same conference.
Yeah.
And so when we were there were a lot of kind of normal church people, is what I call it.
Yeah.
And I am so uncomfortable with like normal praying now. I used to be that person. Like I was totally that person back in the day where you asked me to pray, I'm the one who's going to be Father God in the name of Jesus. That was me.
Yeah.
I am no longer that person at all. And so now someone goes, "Christine, will you pray with me?" And I'm like, "Sure, I just don't pray like everybody else. So we're just gonna, let me hold your hand and let's focus in." I'll, I'll share what the Lord shows me. That's kind of what I say because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. I get out of it by, if I can tell that there's someone that's disturbed by my silence, I'll just narrate the stuff that I'm doing.
That's what I do a
I'm
lot.
like, and I'm
Yeah.
seeing this move, this is being removed, and I'm careful in my wording to not lie. So I don't
Right.
say, "Oh, the Lord is removing it." No, I'm getting rid of it myself. I'm taking out the trash right now. You're being healed in this area. The Lord's not here. I'm doing it.
Yes.
But that gives people comfort. They're like, okay, all right, because the silence bothers people for some reason.
Well, sometimes it's necessary to do the narrating. This is what I've learned is kind of what you said when you were talking about the healing. You do stuff that isn't necessary for them to be a part of. And there are certain things that it is necessary for them to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so, in order to, a lot of times I'll see things that they should do.
Hmm.
Um, like I'll see them doing something, but I can tell it's not that I'm actually seeing their spirit do it. It's that their spirit needs to do it. And so I'll be able to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I need you to partner with it, you know? And I think that that's really cool to be able to do that. I mean, I love doing the work myself, but I love even more empowering others to do the work. I think
Yeah.
that that's more fun.
So you mentioned something very briefly, and my audience would probably crucify me if I didn't make you go back and tell a story about it.
Okay, go ahead.
Levitation, transrelocation, teleportation. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I have a million stories. I only have one levitation story. Okay, so I can start there because that's not super common for me. Um, I was at this, I'm going to call it a conference in South Africa, and it was kind of, it was in the mountains outside of Paarl. For anyone who actually knows South Africa, you would probably know what I'm talking about. Kind of near Cape Town, if you will, but not exactly. And so, anyway, I was doing this conference there. Probably only like, I don't know, 50 people there or something. It wasn't that many. It was a pretty small conference. And um but these guys, they're really open to the wackiness, okay? And I love that. And they're super um they just let go and worship in a way that I love. And so we were doing some really powerful worship, and all of a sudden we had these, this is really funny to me because here I'm in Africa and these Native American in the spirit show up. Okay. So I wasn't expecting that in Africa, but this is what happened. And so we started engaging with them. And so I consider that part of the cloud of witnesses. Okay. But
Yeah.
everybody might speak differently about that. Anyway, they were leading us into relationship, and this is what was really cool. We were having extreme oneness at this conference. Okay, that's what it was like really focused on. And I think that's key. Okay, I really think that that's key. It was oneness with each other and oneness with the Father, especially. And all of a sudden, these, so there are lots of animals out there, and there were these, what are they called? Baboons. So these baboons started coming, and you know, these baboons are, they can be a little violent. I don't
Oh
know if you
yeah.
guys know about baboons, but
Oh
they
yeah.
can get actually really annoying. Like they'll throw poop at you and stuff like that.
Especially the women.
But these baboons, they just came and they were not being rude, okay, is what I call it. They were just kind of like interested in what was going on. And so they started coming. You could see them. It's like right out the window. It was this kind of open, really open window sort of thing. And they started coming down the mountain and across the river. And so, anyway, they started coming down. You can see them. And they started coming, and we're all focused still, like super focused in the spirit. And all of a sudden, we all see this foot of the Father come into this realm, which I've never seen before, by the way. Like, I've never seen the Father in this realm. I've only seen him in the heavenly realms. And so I was like really blown away. Like, what the heck's happening? And you could tell he was trying to do something in the land that was, well, I say trying. He'll probably do whatever he wants, but I'm just saying, like, he was doing something in the land in that place. And so we all witnessed this, you know, and we're like, what's going on? But all we see is this big ginormous foot. You know, we don't see the whole rest of him for some reason. And but it's in this realm. And then all of a sudden we just start really like super worshiping. Okay. Most of us have our eyes closed, which is so funny. We're in this big circle. Everybody's in the circle because we were like doing this kind of drum circle kind of thing. Anyway, we were in this big circle, and we start holding hands. Everybody starts holding hands in this big circle, and we're worshiping and worshiping, and I open my eyes and we are all levitating, all of us. So this isn't one, it's not just me or something. This is like the whole everybody is levitating. And I kind of start freaking out a bit because this has never happened. Well, okay, technically I've had levitation from demonic things, but not in a good way. But this is like the first time it's happened in like, with the Lord. And so it was so cool. Um, my sister was there with me. And afterwards, I'm like, was I making this up? Did this happen? Because it was so wild. I was like, is this really happening? But everybody, we were probably, I mean, not 100 feet off the floor or anything. We're probably just foot and a half or 2 feet off the floor. You know what I mean? But it was really cool. And so that was a really powerful experience. And it was right at the time that COVID started. Okay.
Mhm.
So, like, right when all the shutdowns happened, um, literally, I was in an airplane to go there when Trump shut down all the flights and
Mhm.
we couldn't come. And so it didn't matter. The whole world was like going into shutdown mode, but everybody was gathered for this conference already. And so we were all there. We were all like super affectionate, lots of hugging and kissing and all the things that you weren't even supposed to touch other people or, 6 feet away, whatever. We were in such oneness that there was no sort of worry about disease or anything like that. It was just precious. It was such a good time. So.
Yeah. One of the parts that I like most about that story is that you mentioned the father just popping his foot down. The first time I ever saw the father, that's all I saw was his massive feet next to a mountain range. I'm like, why your feet of all things?
I know.
I found out later he just finds that funny.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never known that. That's hilarious.
But
That's literally the only time I've seen him in this realm. I have never seen him apart from that in this realm. I see him all the time in the heavenly realms. But that was really cool. It was a really fun experience for me.
yeah, and it's a little bit different for me. I see the father a bit more than I see Yeshua down here.
I don't ever see Yeshua or the Father down here at all. I experience Holy Spirit here all the time, um, but not the other two. I mean, I feel like we've talked about this. There are more than just two, but this is
Oh yeah.
uh, I only experience them in the heavenly realms, and so I do think though, for me, I have kind of this. It's part of who I am. I function way more from the heavenly realms than from this realm. And
Mhm.
so it used to not really be that way for me, but this has been a huge shift. And I've noticed when I'm okay, I'll go into the trans relocation stuff right now then, because for a while, um, this is kind of strange. I don't even know how it happened, but somehow the father assembled this team of people here that we all trans relocated together. So we all traveled in the spirit. So some of it was trans relocation, some of it was bilocation, some of it was just translating. I don't know if you guys know the difference, but it's like a lot of kind of different ways to do that. And we were all a very unique team with different giftings. And um, it was interesting what would happen when he would take us on these, I would say, missions. Okay. So he would take us on these missions and these different ways. Sometimes I would be on the earth, sometimes I would be in the spirit realm of the earth. But more than not, I was the person who was in the heavenly realms releasing stuff and doing stuff from there. And so that's kind of more of who I am. So it's really easy for me to do that. And it's
Mhm.
one of the main roles I have is doing, well, just a lot of stuff from there. So I
Mhm.
think that that's why I always experience them there, is
Mhm.
because that's just more like where I live from, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
More of a legislator type of role.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Because, yeah, like just recently, I was on another. I was interviewed by someone else, and we were talking about this. There's like people need to hear this type of stuff. There's like where there has to be more people. Like, oh yeah, there's tons of people that do the same stuff I do. I'm not the only one. There's plenty of us. Just none of us get publicity.
That's the truth.
We're equally unknown. It's like the more powerful you are, the less known you are
Yeah,
on a
it's true.
general playing field. There are some known people that are up there, but most of the time, nah. It's the nobodies that
Yep,
are experiencing all the fun stuff.
I know. I appreciate it actually. Yeah, so I think for me, trans relocation has been a thing for quite a while since I started engaging the heavenly realms. Remember that first lady I said, that spirit mom of that guy that I led? Um, she had been, she called it traveling in the spirit. Okay.
Hmm.
She had been led to travel in the spirit for most of her life. And she was much older than me. So, like 20 or 30 years older than me. And when she was talking, the Lord had promised her years ago that she would have a team of people who would do it with her, but had never provided anyone. And when we were engaging in heaven that first time, he told her that I was the first on her team. And so she said, "Hey, would you be open to this? This is what the Lord does with me." And I'm just like, I'm down for any. I mean, I'm like super down for whatever the Lord leads. And so I was like, okay. And she said, "Well, I'll call you if the Lord tells me to." I'm like, okay. And so the first time she called me up and said, "Hey, the Lord is saying to go to Zambia." And I'm like, go to, okay, well, I don't know what we do. And she goes, "We just do whatever the Lord leads." I'm like, perfect. That's how I roll. And so anyway, we started engaging with Yeshua. That was who was leading us. Okay. So we were engaging with Yeshua, and it was a little different. So my relationship is different now than it was even then. Okay. So even
Hmm.
10 years ago when I started this, I was a lot more separate. I don't know. I'm not actually separate, but my soul found myself to be separate from Yeshua. And so it was more of a relationship like we're relating right now, of he's leading something, I'm following, he's taking my hand, that sort of thing. Now I don't see it like that at all. We're like one all the time, and so we move as one. There is really no separation, so it's a little less relational, if you will. It's, I don't know how to explain that, but it's different. So back then it was very relational still. And he would wrap us up in himself, and he would then take us, and he literally traveled with us, where now most of the time I just appear places, I don't travel places. But he took us and traveled, and we went to Zambia, and this is my first time ever doing this, and so I didn't know what to expect. But all of a sudden we're in Zambia, and I've never, okay, at that time I was, had like no relationship with Africa at all. At that time, I didn't even have any desire to go to Africa, actually. I was like what I would consider a typical white person. Okay. So, no Africa roots, nothing that would lead me back there. And so I had never even, I'm sure I studied Zambia on a map when I was a kid, but I never even really heard of Zambia. Where's Zambia? I don't know. And so I'm in Zambia, and there are all of these people. We're on this like dirt, it's like a dirt street kind of. And there are these very hmm, humble shops that are along this street, and even the sidewalks are dirt. And I saw this lady out with this broom, and this broom was like not what we have in the States. And it's like this kind of straw sort of broom, and she's sweeping in front of her shop. And I'm thinking, why is she sweeping the dirt? But she's sweeping in front of this shop, and these other people, there are these two men who see us and are like really weirded out that we're there. And I'm thinking, well, this has never happened before. I'm thinking, we were traveling in the spirit only, not like people are going to see us kind of thing. I don't know how to say it, but I really didn't expect that. I could feel the dirt under my feet. I had bare feet. I
Mhm.
felt the dirt under my feet. I felt the wind. And I'm thinking, this is not how I engage heaven. So when I engage in the heavenly realms, I do not feel and see things the same way I do in the earth. Like it's almost just a partial seeing and feeling and all of that, you know? I don't know how to explain that, but now all of a sudden I'm there. I'm literally there, you know? And uh all of these little kids start running up to us. And all of a sudden I find myself this is going to sound so weird. But Yeshua gave us these tracks. Like, you know how you share I never do. I never use tracks. I think they're the corniest things in the whole world. Like I've always hated tracks. But people will use these tracks to like share the gospel or something. Well, he had given us these tracks to give to these kids, probably because I didn't speak the language. I don't know. But here I am giving these kids these tracks. They're so excited and they start playing with us and loving on us and all of these things. These other people are just kind of watching us really weirdly, but these kids are loving us and we're loving them. And we started having this cool experience like, it was kind of like the spirit and earth came together very much because there was this vortex of the spirit that kind of came and everybody was running around and it was really cool. And then all of a sudden we're like back where
Mhm.
not there anymore. Okay. And I was thinking, what, this whole time I'm literally on the phone with this lady and I'm also there. So I'm so confused. How is this happening? Because I'm thinking, if I'm actually there, how can I also be here? And that I didn't know at the time that there was something like bilocation, which is what I was doing. But
Mhm.
I had no idea. I was totally a newbie and had never heard of people doing this. And I started doing that. And that was my first experience ever doing that. But it became a weekly thing at least. And so I've now been doing that forever. Most of the time, I don't travel. Like I said, I'm just there and it's a
Mhm.
lot easier. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love see a lot of your stories remind me of stories that I haven't told in a long time. Like years ago, again talking about that more relational time period. Well,
Uh-huh.
which it's still like that for me, it's just more relationships, which we're going to go to next is the more relationships idea. Um but I remember one day, this was my early years, so maybe 2017, 2018, sitting up in my bed and I realized that I hadn't had a supernatural encounter in like a week or two. So I told Yeshua, I was like, "Hey, I'm bored. We need to have some fun. We need to go somewhere. I need to see some. I need an encounter of some sort. It's
Yes.
been a little too long." No sooner than I finished saying that, I got pulled through the top of my head. Is the best way I could describe it. And I'm floating in China. There's a huddle of people praying in tongues under umbrellas. It's raining and they're praying in tongues, and then it's almost like whenever you have these translocation or translation bilocation experiences, it's like the version of you that's doing the work gets there with all the information they're supposed to have to do the job they're there to do, so it's almost on
Yes.
autopilot.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
I get there, I kind of stand before them and I'm not even 100% sure if they could see me or not. It didn't look like they cared either way. And I remember I blew over them and they started tumbling and flying. Umbrellas were going. And I remember the wind blew so hard that the direction of the rain turned almost completely horizontal. And then I snapped back and I was back in my body. And I had so much energy pouring out of me for like 3 days straight that I was
Mm.
trying to go to work. I used to work with this guy that did maintenance and landscaping and that type of stuff.
Mhm.
We were riding together and he was struggling to drive because he kept crying while I was in the car. he's like, I've been trying to keep tears in all day. He's like, whatever is on you is overwhelming. And I was like, oh, and then I told him the story. But that, being able to just pop over, be fully there, and I found that easier than being in heaven, to be honest. It took less exercise, I guess, since we're already down here. It's less of a travel, but even though it's still that teleportation idea. I'm not really covering a distance. I'm just there.
Yeah.
Um. So
It's
the
so
thing I wanted
funny. I find it opposite. I'm just going to tell you
oh,
that for
these
me,
days it's full
being in the
spectrum. I
heaven
go
is
where I
like
want.
so easy. It's just a focus thing. Like I'm focused there or I'm not. And it's that there is no traveling for
Yeah,
me ever. And so I think that's so much easier for me than transrelocating or ever. I have
yeah,
to focus, like some
yeah,
people are like that when they engage in heaven. They have to like get the right music, get the right, all of these things.
yeah,
And for me, that's the easy part. This is like I'll really focus in for the trans relocating.
yeah. And
Uh,
that's more so where I'm at now, is where all of it's easy. I kind of do what I want at this phase. But in my early years, popping up all over the world was easy. Accessing heaven, that I learned how to access heaven a bit later, like maybe that same year, just months apart. But I was like, okay, if I need to be somewhere, I know how to just pop in over there a little bit. That came first.
that's
um,
cool.
so something I want to pick your brain on a little bit is your understanding of Elohim, or as I call them, the royal family, more than a trinity.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've had encounters with more gods, more entities than most people think exist. And I'm
Mhm.
certain you have as well. So I'd like to hear some of your encounters, or at least an overview of your stance on that.
Sure. Um, yeah, I think it seems we haven't talked enough about this. Like I would really love to talk a ton about it. Um, so it seems like it might be different than yours, but
Mhm.
I would love to talk about it. Um, so for a long time, there's so much I don't know. You said, how much are you willing to share? I am willing to share everything except for then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, can I share that? You know? Um, but okay, here's kind of how all this was opened up to me. Is it okay if I talk like that and tell you?
Go ahead.
Um, the very first time that I was, remember the place that the levitation happened in South Africa?
Hmm.
Okay, that wasn't my first conference there. I did my first conference at that place in the mountains there. Um, I don't know, a year or two before that. And it was my first time there. And there were these three guys who were kind of hosting. And I'd never met them before. I was just kind of referred to come out and do this thing, right? And so they greeted me, all three of them, and they didn't know who I was either, really. It was like some person had said, hey, she'd be great to have come out and talk, right? Well, I didn't realize it. And this happens to me a lot. I do a lot of traveling when I'm sleeping, and I don't like to experience when I'm sleeping. Like everybody else loves dreaming and all this. And I'm like, just let me rest. I'm totally over dealing with everything. And so, anyway, I don't usually experience all the things when I'm sleeping, but I do a lot of ministry work when I'm sleeping. And so I don't realize I'm doing it. I have no idea. It's just this happens and people tell me about their encounters with me. And so this happened with when I went there, and there was this guy who met me there, and I'm like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And he said, "Oh, you came and visited me last night. I already met you." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And so we started talking, and this is all before the conference started. So apparently he met with me and then told his other two buddies that they did ministry together, that he encountered me and what happened. And so they realized we can really talk about some of the stuff that we don't talk about with other people. And so they kind of started that off with me as I got there. And then I did the conference, and I am one of these people that I don't mean to, but when I'm teaching or something, I'm looking out in the crowd and I am going, are they getting this? Are they encountering this stuff? Are they bored? Are they sleeping? Like, this is always what I'm doing as I'm talking. And so it's not healthy, I understand, but that's what I do. And so this one guy who was part of that team of three, he's out there like this the whole time. And I'm thinking he is bored to death. He's sleeping through the whole thing. I really thought he was sleeping. And a lot of awesome stuff starts happening in this conference. And after the whole day is over, because it was like an 8-hour conference or something, I was teaching the whole time. And afterwards, I do like a ministry time where I meet one-on-one with people and all of that. And then, and then we're all starving. So we all go and eat together, all the leadership. And um, and that guy who I thought was sleeping comes up to me and says, "Hey, I was just having some really powerful encounters while you were talking, and I really connected with you on a lot of stuff. And there's this thing that I've never told anybody about, and I feel like I'm supposed to tell you." I'm like, "Okay." And thankfully I can talk about it now. But he said, "Have you ever experienced anything that's pre-foundational?" And I'm like, "What are you even talking about?" I mean, that's sad, but at that time I had no idea what he meant. And he said, like before the foundations of the earth, before anything was created, like before that time, have you experienced anything? I'm like, "No." And he said, "Well, I thought maybe you had, and that's why I was supposed to talk to you, but here's what I'm supposed to tell you." And he just started laying out everything about this Council of 11. And I was just taken in, and all that he was speaking about. One thing is, I'm really sensitive in the spirit to know what's truth and not truth. And so as he was speaking, I was like, "Oh, this is true." I mean, I even would question, I was questioning like, why 11, why not 12? Because I know like 12's governmental and all these things. And so I was like, I don't understand with that. Is that real? I'm doing that the whole time. And I just keep getting lots of confirmations about it. And so after this, I'm like, "Okay, Lord, show me. Like, I need to experience what you're talking about." Well, I didn't know what I was getting myself into in a good way, but I was blown away by everything I started to be shown, and how I will say I existed before the creation of a lot of other spirits. Okay, so before the creation of the world and all of that, the pre-foundational times, I existed. I was not one of the 11, but I came from one of the 11. And so I was created by a certain part of who now I know as the Elohim. Okay, so I was shown that these 11 eventually made a decision to have oneness, to become what many, especially in like the Jewish faith, know as Adonai as one, Echad, right? And so that was the choice. That being said, you can still engage them separately. So just because of that, it's kind of like Yeshua saying he's one with the Father. It's like yes and no, And so anyway, I realized that this whole time I had been relating to God the Father, as I would call him for most of my life, that it wasn't actually my father. That I was relating to another one in the 11. And that's who I saw and thought was the only one. And I actually came from another one who was actually my father, who looked completely different. And acts actually a lot like me in some ways. Or I act like him probably. But anyway, there's not just male, it's not just fathers, there are women ones too. And I don't know if women's the right word, but female sort of. Um, sex is such a weird thing in the spirit. It's not exactly the same, but you kind of have this feminine, masculine thing going on with every being and every part of your eternal image. So anyway, that's kind of where all that came from for me. And I've experienced lots of other gods that I believe, I mean, you can argue the scriptures if you're a Christian about this, but it talks about us being gods. And we are all, in that way, spiritual entities that many of us are rulers. I'm a ruler. I'm a king. I know that. I don't call myself a queen because in the heavenly realms, there is one part of me that's a queen, but I function more out of my kingship as a king there. And so, there are different parts of even who we are,
Yeah.
let alone who we call God,
That's powerful. I'm going to leave that for food for the audience to chew on.
Okay.
Of course, I believe they could deal with it if I got you to expound on some more, but some things do better if you let them feast on the mystery for a bit.
Yes. I love the mystery because that's what draws us into all of the really good stuff and the stuff that not everyone else knows. Like, I don't know if anyone has the same revelation as me. It's fine. I'm happy with it, actually. I love going, I'm the only one who gets to see this part. Of course, there are probably people all over the world I don't know about, but I think about this a lot, and I think the mysteries, that's the joyful part. That's the really cool stuff. That's the deep relationship, loveliness, intimacy, all of that. It's wonderful. So.
Nice. So, Christine, it's been nice having you on the show. What I want to do is I want to open the floor up for you to give any last words of wisdom or advice to the audience. You can pray for them if you want, or, and then after you finish that, please tell people where they can connect with you, where they can find you.
Okay, sure. I don't know if I do know I have a lot of wisdom, but I don't know what kind of wisdom everyone needs to hear, except for I think the best part of this whole journey is getting yourself out of the box and letting our God, whoever you call that, really destroy the boxes that you put yourself in. Because I know for me, I put myself in a lot of boxes and put him in a lot of boxes, more accurately, without knowing it and really thinking that I wasn't doing it. And having so many religious mindsets and things that I inherited from other people. And I don't even know who those people are. Like, I just inherited things from culture and all of that that made me not be completely open to who he is and what he wants to reveal. And I think the revelation is the coolest thing. Receiving revelation about things that are outside of what anyone has ever written about. And, we don't have to just go, well, it hasn't been written, so it can't be so. I mean, that's just a really stupid way of thinking. It is. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I wish I would have been open to knowing that and really accepting the logic, actually, that, hey, that is kind of dumb to think that way. Instead, I just took this religious stuff, and I wish that everybody would just go, I want you to show me whatever you want to show me, like to the Lord. Just do that. That's the coolest thing, is to just go, take me wherever you want to take me. Do whatever you want to do with me. Show me who you are and what you love. And that's the coolest stuff. So that's what I would leave everyone with. You can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of that stuff. I would say if you want a private appointment to join some of my classes, I have some free classes. I have some paid classes. Honestly, probably like everything in the world, if you pay for it, it's going to be better. So um, uh, this is what I believe most of the time. But anyway, you can connect there. You can go to engagingheaven.as.me and book an appointment, get into classes, register for that stuff there. Connect with me on social media. That's a good place. I go live on TikTok a lot. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Well, Christine, it was nice having you on. This was fantastic. And I look forward to working with you again in the future. Like Christine said, we did get to work together in Florida this just last month. So that was fun. So,
Yes, let's connect more, man.
so y'all, that concludes this episode of The Inner. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.